For those of you that don't know or haven't experienced a bully offer, essentially a bully offer is when a seller states to any buyers and all buyers that they're going to look at offers at a specific time and date. Typically, that time and date is going to be 1 or 2 or 3 days after the listing goes live. Now, with the CREB rules, offers must be presented within 48 hours. That being said, sometimes the seller will try to dictate that we will not look at offers till, say, the Sunday coming up. In these scenarios, they're anticipating that they're going to have a really high volume of showings, and it's going to generate a lot of offers. Well, a bully offer, its intention is so that the buyer can make an offer that doesn't obey the seller's request to look at offers in a day or two. They demand that the seller look at an offer right now. Now, typical ingredients of a bully offer, the way I see it from what we've been seeing going on, if you're going to make a bully offer, you want your offer to be very attractive. If you want your buyer to have any chance of getting the property, it's unlikely that a seller is going to come off of their idea to see offers the next day for an offer that's 10 grand below listing price, etc. You're going to want to make sure that if you're representing a buyer and you try the bully offer, that you're going to go into it offering the seller something very competitive and something that is going to make them second guess waiting till the next day. Essentially, as a buyer, you want to put the seller on a decision. Now, when a lot of you that are hearing this, some of you may have had experience with this, some of you may not, but what you got to think about is how many times have you represented a seller and you've pre-planned how things are going to go, and then when an offer comes in, it takes everything off the table and suddenly that seller is uncomfortable, they're not sure what to do, and sometimes they just make a rash decision and boom, you've got an offer accepted. Sometimes you'll have a listing where, let's pretend that the asking price was $500,000 and an offer comes in and before the listing occurred, the seller said, you know what, we're not going to accept anything less than $495. Sure enough, your seller ends up accepting a $485 5 days after the property hits the market, and they totally changed on you the expectation they had set within you. Well, when you think about a bully offer, it's very similar. The buyer is attempting to put the seller on a decision. And if they can make it compelling enough, that seller may forego the potential for a multiple offer the following day or even later that night and accept your buyer's offer. Anything can happen with people that are buying or selling because the pressure is high. They don't want to make the wrong decision and they're trying to do what's right for them. And when you think about it, the seller is the one that calls the shots essentially on how a negotiation goes. So if a seller tells everybody, 15 different agents, that they're going to be looking at offers the next day, the seller is permitted to change their mind. When you watch the RECA videos, it states that there isn't a requirement to be fair. In most of our eyes, fair would be that we've set the expectation with all 15 agents that we are not going to look at offers till tomorrow. That's setting a standard and an expectation. So all of us would think that that would be fair. But the seller is permitted to change their mind. And if you've been bitten by that, it sucks. You do feel like it's unfair. You have the difficult task of explaining to your buyers what's going on. They look at it like, did the selling realtor do their job? Are we being hustled? Sometimes they even question you in the process. Well, if you're representing a buyer, you want to consider explaining this whole scenario to your buyer so that they have an understanding that the seller can and often does change their mind. In these heightened times of COVID, especially with the lockdown, if a property hits the market today at 10 a.m., and it generates, let's say, 20 showings. And the selling side sets the expectation that all offers will be reviewed tomorrow, Tuesday night at, let's say, 8 p.m. You as the buying side, if you decided to make a bully offer, you could throw in an offer. And even though your client hasn't seen the property, maybe the showings have booked up so fast that the earliest opportunity you can is to get your client into the property tomorrow at noon. It's a very realistic scenario that we're seeing play out. If you were to submit an offer and your offer was subject to viewing, your showing is tomorrow at 10. If you put a subject to viewing clause in that expires tomorrow at noon, that has to be removed, well, at that point, the seller might look at it and say, this offer is really strong. It gives us our ideal possession date. The buyer looks like a well-qualified buyer. And they're telling us in their offer that they're not willing to compete. Do we want to accept this? Let's pretend that your offer is $10,000 or $15,000 over asking price. And I'm not suggesting that you do that. I'm suggesting that you study the value of the home, talk to your client, get their comfort level, and put it in an offer that makes sense to them. If this is your first offer for this client, odds are they're not going to be wanting to go too high. If they've already lost out on 2 or 3 properties, there's a good chance they're going to be willing to go above the asking price and give a generous offer just to get the property. Let's get back to what I was talking about though. In the event that you submit that offer, it's very attractive. It tells the seller that you're not willing to compete, and it's got a subject to viewing clause that needs to be removed by tomorrow at noon. They may very well accept your offer. Your client can still get in and view the property tomorrow at 10, and if they find some things that they really don't like, they can send a non-waiver for the subject to viewing and be out of the deal. Well, in this scenario, what has the seller lost? They still have the ability to get into their competition if they wish tomorrow night. They did test your offer, which was very attractive enough to make them consider foregoing the bidding war or the multiples that may ensue. And your buyer had a chance at getting the property without potentially losing it in a multiple offer scenario. So from a buyer's perspective, being able to explain that type of scenario and prepare them before you start looking at homes is of paramount importance so they can understand all the different variables and potential ways that this could play out. Now, a year ago, we probably wouldn't have been having this discussion, but we need to be mindful of the market. You are a professional. You are aware whether or not the property your clients want to buy is scarce. Supply and demand rules, they always exist. So knowing whether you think, from your professional opinion, you're going to go into a potential multiple or have to present a bully offer in order for your client to get the property they need, that's on you to really determine the situation and really try to educate them as best you can. Things happen fast, but I'll tell you what, if you spent 20 minutes, half hour going over different scenarios, it is a lot higher chance that your clients are either going to win or be better suited to win the next property that hits the market in their price point and in their community. Now, from a seller's perspective, when you think about it, you're about to take on this listing. You've been studying the market, so have they. You know that you're one of 5 properties that exist in that price point for that style of home. And just before you go to put the property on the market, 3 of them disappear. Now you're one of 3 properties left. You really have to have this discussion with your sellers. You don't want a bully offer to come in and change everything. You know, there's that famous saying right now that that's going around in social media, Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, we're not getting punched in the mouth with the bully offer, but it might feel that way to your sellers if they're not prepared. So you really want to think to yourself, how can I prepare my client in case this happens? Well, before it happens, you can explain to them, you have an agenda. We're quite certain we're going to get into a multiple offer scenario. I want you, my seller, to consider, what if this happens? What if we get an offer that's $10,000 above your asking price, that has your perfect possession date? The buyer has a letter of pre-qualification that gives you the confidence that they're going to be able to go the distance. What if this plays out? Are you wanting still to wait for the next day? Or do you think you're going to be swayed to accept that offer? They don't need to make a decision in the moment, but preparing them for this scenario is going to be a huge asset, obviously, for you in prepping them for anything that can happen and most likely will in these scenarios. We have seen situations where an agent has thought that the property is going to go into multiples, so they set the expectation early. And lo and behold, the next day, there's only one offer on the table. If a buyer is wanting to make an offer today and is told that they're going to need to wait till tomorrow, well, a lot of those agents, they're not going to understand that they can push an offer through in hopes that it'll put the seller on a decision. A lot of them are going to wait till tomorrow. They don't want to give away any sort of competitive advantage. So if offers are to be presented at 7 p.m., many agents are going to wait till 6:30 to submit their offer. What a lot of you are finding is that by the time the evening comes today, with the intention that offers are presented tomorrow, you're shocked to find out that the property is sold. And this is where that unfairness feeling comes into play, because you felt like you were operating by the rules set forth by the seller. So just explain and understand to your buyers and your sellers that these things can happen. The seller is permitted to change their mind, and preparation is key in these scenarios.